Hello, in this video I'm going to walk you through Ardha Kapotanasana, half pigeon, ways that you can get into the shape, how you can modify the shape, and then a complete modification for the shape if you're in class and half pigeon is just not working for you, ways that you can build up to it for the external rotation of the hip. So let's start by just going into the shape so you know what the shape is, and I'll show you a few different orientations on the mat so that you can see how the body looks in it. So we'll begin in downward facing dog, lifting the right leg back and up just to lengthen the hamstring on the left side, and then drawing the right knee in towards my chest and lowering my right leg to the ground. So this is going to be where we're ideally working towards in half pigeon, is to have the front leg that comes out with the shin parallel or past parallel with the front of your mat. And then from there, you're going to come down on that back knee, and we want to lengthen the back leg straight behind us. So I'm going to come to the side so you can see my shin is parallel to the front of the mat. And then I want to, before I lower my right hip down, take and tuck my left toes and pull and lengthen the left leg or the back leg straight behind you. Look and see if it's straight behind you, in line with your hip. Soften the leg down, and then from here we're wanting to square that hip down towards the ground. So the purpose of this shape is an external rotation of one hip and a lengthening of the quadricep and the flexor on the other leg. So that's what we're trying to achieve in this half pigeon shape. And ways that we can intensify these stretches, you'll find, can be to fold over this front leg, which is going to put more pressure on the front leg and more weight to open that hip. And then also to find a back bend, which will deepen the lengthening on the flexor and the quadricep on that back leg. So that's how this is what we're working for ideally in this shape, and there's plenty more room to go deeper in it, working basically then towards a full split asana. But how do we modify this shape so that we can work towards that? I'm going to show you. So we're going to go back and start on the left side so that one side of my body isn't completely stretched and the other side isn't. So starting from downward facing dog again, lifting the left leg up and then drawing the left knee in towards the chest and lower the left knee to the ground. So notice here, I'm not bringing the shin parallel to the front of the mat. My foot is more towards my groin, and then I'm going to settle here. So this is still getting the external rotation of the hip on this front leg, but it's just not as deep as you build up to the opening by bringing the foot towards the hip. But maybe your hip is not even touching the ground. Maybe when you're coming into this shape, and I'll come to the side here, maybe when you're coming into this shape, you are way up here and you're finding it really difficult to soften into the shape. This is when blocks can come in handy. So you could take a block and put it underneath your hip, your buttock, and then melt into the shape that way. So then you can still pull this back leg long and straight. And then now my buttock is resting there, and I can maybe start bringing my foot up a little bit. And I'm finding some ability to relax into the shape because I have the blocks supporting me. Another way to use blocks in this shape would be to use them as your support. So you have your foot in towards your groin and you're trying to find depth in the shape while keeping that back leg straight. You can be up here on blocks, controlling your depth here by just using the strength of your upper body, keeping that back leg long and straight, and just controlling how far that hip can settle down onto the ground. So that's two ways of using blocks in the shape. And now let's see what we're working for to find depth from here. So say you've come down and you have your foot towards your groin, your back leg is behind you and it's working towards getting long and straight over time. Now what we're working for, if the hip is on the ground and you're not using the blocks anymore, is pulling that other hip forward so that you're squaring the hip, because that's what's going to isolate the quadricep and the flexor stretch on that back leg. And then from there, once you get your hips square, then you're going to start inching that foot up and getting it so the shin comes parallel. So that's how different ways that we can modify and work towards depth in a half pigeon, Ardha Kapotanasana. Now I'm going to show you how, if none of those shapes are working for your body and you hear half pigeon being called out as the next shape and your mind starts racing, here's where you can go. You're going to come onto your back and you're going to find supine half pigeon. Put your ankle on your knee. So here I'm putting my right ankle on my left knee. My foot dangles off the side of my knee. And then guide your knee in towards your chest. And this is focusing. You can see how this is making that shape that the front leg made when we were upright. So this is focused on the external rotation of the hip in the shape of half pigeon. And so you would just control the stretch by guiding the opposite knee in towards your chest to find depth. And if you're really tight, you might not be able to come very deep. You might be up here. That's fine. You can use a strap or a towel here to start guiding in, but you're just working towards this rotation and this stretch. Now, the thing about the lying half pigeon is it doesn't cover the lengthening of the flexor and the quadricep that we're getting in half pigeon. So the only way to get that stretch would be to find, not the only way, but a very good way to find it is to come into crescent lunge. So one leg forward, the other leg back, foot resting on the ground, and your hips fall down and forward. And that's going to open up the flexor and the quads. In class, you might not really have time to do both of these stretches during a half pigeon stretch. So I would recommend just maintaining the integrity of the shape by coming into that lying half pigeon shape and getting that external rotation of the hip, knowing that probably throughout practice there will be plenty of options to lengthen the quadricep and the flexor. So thank you. I hope this was helpful. Namaste.